You'll always be the backup, Naomi. My mother didn't mean it as an insult. That's what made it worse. She said it the way you say bring a sweater. Casual. Practical. Predictable. It was a Wednesday evening. The kitchen smelled like lemon cleaner and roasted chicken. My mother was at the counter slicing carrots into perfect coins. Lila was upstairs FaceTiming someone loud enough for the whole house to hear. And I was setting the table. Because of course I was. You know what I mean, Mom added, glancing over her shoulder when I didn't respond. Lila's more fragile. You've always been the steady one. Steady. Reliable. Dependable. Backup. I placed the last fork beside Dad's plate and realized something quietly devastating. No one had ever described me as first choice. Lila was born during a thunderstorm. The story gets told every Thanksgiving. Mom goes glassy-eyed and says, she came into the world dramatic. I was born on a Tuesday afternoon. No weather event. No poetic backdrop. Just punctual. Growing up, Lila had emotions like fireworks. Loud. Unpredictable. Demanding attention. I had mine folded neatly inside. When Lila cried over a broken friendship in middle school, my mother slept in her room. When I cried after failing my first chemistry exam, my father said, well, that's unusual for you. Try harder. When Lila wanted to quit piano, she was encouraged to explore other passions. When I wanted to quit debate club because I was exhausted, I was told, you finish what you start. It wasn't cruelty. It was distribution of emotional resources. Lila needed more. So I needed less. That was the math. Lila dropped out of her private university after one semester. It wasn't the right environment, Mom explained to relatives. Dad refinanced part of his retirement to cover the tuition loss. I received a full academic scholarship to a state school 3 hours away. Mom hugged me at move-in and said, I don't worry about you. Sounded like praise. Felt like exile. I met Daniel during my 3rd year. He noticed things. Like when I minimized myself in conversations. Like when I said it's fine too quickly. Like when I flinched at the word selfish. On our 3rd date, he said, you're allowed to take up space. I laughed. Like he'd told a joke. Daniel proposed on a quiet hiking trail at sunset. No flash mob. No audience. Just us and wind moving through pine trees. When we told my parents, Mom cried before I finished the sentence. Oh, Naomi, finally. Finally. As if I'd been waiting in a queue. Within 48 hours, she had contacted 3 venues, created a Pinterest board, drafted a 240-person guest list. Daniel's family list had 18 names. Mine had 27. Mom's additions filled the rest. The ballroom was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the skyline. Crystal chandeliers suspended like frozen rain. Polished marble floors reflecting everything back twice as bright. Mom walked through it like she owned it. This, she said softly, will show everyone. Show them what? That her daughters were successful? That our family was intact? That she'd raised us right? It didn't matter. I signed the deposit. $38,000. Paid from my savings. Mom insisted she'd handle the vision. I told myself that was fine. I always told myself that. 2 months into planning, I noticed Lila's name listed beside mine in several vendor emails. Just helping coordinate, she'd said breezily. Then came the menu tasting. Lila rejected my first choice entree. It's boring. Mom agreed. We switched to something more elevated. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. Are you okay? Of course, I said. Of course. 3 weeks before the wedding. That Wednesday. The carrot slicing. The word backup. It wasn't just the word. It was the tone. Like it had always been true. Like I should already know. A wedding is stressful, Mom continued. If something happened, you'd understand. What something? I asked carefully. She shrugged. You never know. If Lila had something going on emotionally, we might need to shift attention. Shift attention. From my wedding. To my sister. Again. That night, lying beside Daniel, I stared at the ceiling fan turning slow circles. Do you ever feel, I asked, like you're a contingency plan? He rolled onto his side. What happened? I told him. All of it. The comment. The implication. The pattern stretching back decades. He listened without interrupting. Then he said something simple. You don't have to play that role anymore. I didn't respond, because I didn't know how not to. 2 days later, Lila called. Hey, random question. If my art showcase gets confirmed for that weekend, you'd be flexible with the wedding, right? I went quiet. You're joking. No. I mean, Mom said you'd understand. There it was again. Understand. Like my milestones were adjustable. Like my life events were movable furniture. Like I was a placeholder. After we hung up, I opened the venue contract. Cancellation policy. 14 days for 70% refund. We were at 10. 4 days left. The number glowed on the screen like a countdown clock. The cancellation policy didn't look dramatic. It wasn't written in red. It didn't flash or warn. It sat there calmly in black serif font. Client may cancel within 14 calendar days of final payment for a 70% refund of the venue deposit. 10 days had passed. 4 days left. 4 days to decide whether I was brave or just tired enough. The next morning I woke up before Daniel. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I opened my laptop. If you've ever been the responsible child, you know this instinct. When emotions get overwhelming, you organize something. So I made a spreadsheet. Column A cost. Column B paid. Column C refundable. Column D emotional. The pattern became obvious. I was financing something I wasn't directing. The wedding wasn't being built around me. It was being built around optics. There's a moment from when I was 8. Lila had a dance recital the same night. I won a regional spelling competition. Mom went to the recital. Dad dropped me off at the competition with a packed sandwich and said, "We'll celebrate later." Lila forgot half her routine. Mom said she was brave for trying. I won first place. We celebrated 2 days later with grocery store cupcakes. It wasn't malicious. It was prioritization. And I had quietly learned my role. And stability doesn't get urgency. When Daniel woke up, I was still at the kitchen table. Spreadsheet open. Coffee untouched. You look like you're calculating war, he said gently. I'm calculating freedom. He pulled out the chair across from me. Talk to me. So I did. Not just about the wedding. About everything. The recital. The scholarship. The way my mother's voice softened for Lila and sharpened for me. Daniel didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said something that landed hard. You're not canceling a venue. You're deciding whether your life is negotiable. I swallowed. 'Cause that's exactly what it felt like. That afternoon I decided to test something. I called my mother. Hey Mom. Hypothetically, if Lila had something important scheduled the same weekend as the wedding, what would we do? A pause. Well, we'd have to consider it. Consider postponing? Naomi, don't twist this. You know your sister's emotional health is delicate. So my marriage is less time-sensitive than her art show? That's not fair. No, I said quietly. It's consistent. She exhaled sharply. You've always been able to handle things. Lila needs more support. There it was again. Because I handle things, I deserve less protection. The invisible contract. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about, not the legal kind, the emotional ones. The ones families write without ink. You will be the stable one. You will not compete for attention. You will sacrifice quietly. You will understand. And I had signed that contract at 8 years old. Without knowing it existed. Day 11. The florist emailed asking for final centerpiece confirmations. Mom replied before I could. We'll go bigger. Day 12. Lila posted on social media. Big things coming soon. Comments flooded in. Wedding surprise? She liked them. Didn't correct them. Day 13. Daniel's mother called. I just want you to know, she said carefully. This is your day, not a family showcase. I didn't realize I needed someone else's mother to say that. Day 14. 9:02 a.m. I stared at the venue's number for a full minute before dialing. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. Grand Meridian Ballroom, this is Elise. Hi Elise. This is Naomi Clark. I need to cancel my reservation for May 18th. Silence. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is everything all right? That question felt enormous. Yes, I said. Actually, yes. She walked me through the paperwork, the cancellation form, the refund breakdown, processing time, 5 to 7 business days. When I hung up, the apartment felt different. Not lighter, clearer, like a fog had lifted. He came home that evening. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor, the wedding binder open in front of me. It's done, I said. He searched my face. Are you okay? I nodded. Are you? He didn't hesitate. Yes. No fear. No disappointment. No ego. Just yes. That's when I knew I hadn't canceled a marriage. I'd protected it. The real fear didn't hit until later that night. It came quietly. What if I'm overreacting? What if I'm being dramatic? What if this is selfish? I almost called Mom to explain, to soften it, to frame it as stress-related. Instead, I did something new. I sat with the discomfort, and I didn't fix it. Mom texted Saturday afternoon. Don't forget dinner tomorrow. We need final numbers. Need, not want. Need. I didn't respond. Sunday came. I wore jeans. Not the soft pastel dress Mom preferred for family dinners. Daniel squeezed my hand before we walked in. Whatever happens, he whispered, we're not backing down. The irony made me almost laugh. Not backing down. From being the backup. The dining room was already set. Dad at the head of the table. Lila glowing with something secret. Mom in hosting mode. So, she said brightly. Final confirmations? I folded my napkin carefully in my lap. There won't be any. She blinked. What do you mean? I canceled the wedding. Forks froze. Lila's smile evaporated. Dad leaned back slowly. Mom's voice changed first. Low. Controlled. Excuse me. I canceled the venue. And the catering. And the band. Silence filled the room like rising water. Why would you do something so irrational? Mom demanded. It's not irrational, I said calmly. It's corrective. Lila laughed nervously. Corrective of what? Of a pattern where my life is adjustable. Dad finally spoke. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being done. Mom's composure cracked. What will people think? And there it was. Not, are you happy? Are you hurt? Are you okay? But, what will people think? Daniel spoke then. They'll think we got married. The room went still again. Mom looked between us like we'd broken some sacred code. You can't just dismantle everything because you're feeling sensitive. I'm not sensitive, I said. I'm aware. Lila crossed her arms. This is about me, isn't it? No, I replied. That's the point. Dinner ended early. Mom didn't hug me goodbye. Dad avoided eye contact. Lila texted me later. You've embarrassed all of us. I stared at the word embarrassed, as if dignity were a public performance. Daniel and I sat on the couch that night in silence. Are you scared? He asked. Yes, I said honestly. Good, he replied. That means it matters. Monday morning my phone buzzed. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't Lila. It was the venue. Naomi, I just wanted to let you know. Someone has already inquired about your date. If you're certain, we'll release it today. Someone else. Another bride. Another family. Another version of a wedding. My thumb hovered over the screen. Release the date. Make it permanent. Close the door completely. For the first time in my life, I wasn't asking, will this disappoint them? I was asking, will this protect me? I pressed. Yes. Release it. The date was gone by noon. Just like that. May 18th, the Skyline Ballroom, the crystal chandeliers, the imported orchids, now belonged to someone else. I expected to feel panic. Instead, I felt something strange. Relief with a pulse. Like a bone had been reset. Painful, but aligned. The call started at 1:17 p.m. Not from my mother. Not from Lila. From Aunt Denise. Naomi, honey. I just heard. Is everything okay? Did Daniel call it off? There it was. Of course that would be the narrative. Bride gets left. Stable daughter finally cracks. Oh no, I said evenly. Daniel and I are fine. We canceled it. A pause. You canceled your own wedding? Yes. Longer pause. Well, that's bold. Bold. Translation. Inconvenient. By 3 p.m., 3 cousins had texted. By 5 p.m., my grandmother called. By 6 p.m., I knew what version of events my mother had released into circulation. She's overwhelmed. Wedding stress got to her. Naomi's always been high-strung underneath. High-strung. I almost laughed. I had been called many things in my life. Emotional wasn't one of them. Daniel came home to find me staring at my phone. You look like you're watching your reputation get edited, he said. I am. He sat beside me. Do you want to correct it? I thought about that. Did I want to defend myself? Explain? Justify? No, I said finally. Let it breathe. That night, Lila posted on Instagram a soft-filtered photo of her holding a wine glass on Mom's patio. Caption: Sometimes big changes are necessary. Family first. Always. The comments poured in. Is everything okay? You're such a rock for your sister. Proud of how you handle hard things. I stared at the screen. Rock. She was being praised for supporting me through a crisis that didn't exist. And I realized something uncomfortable. Lila didn't even know she was doing it. She had grown up in the same invisible contract. She was the one who needed protecting. I was the one who absorbed impact. Neither of us had questioned it. Until now. At 9:42 p.m. my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Hello. Naomi? This is Mrs. Alvarez. I sat up straighter. Mrs. Alvarez had been my high school English teacher. She was retired now. I hadn't spoken to her in years. I heard about the wedding, she said gently. Of course she had. Small towns don't forget. I just wanted to tell you something. I braced myself. When you were 16, you wrote an essay about being the supporting character in your own life. My breath caught. I remembered that essay. I'd written it after Lila had a public meltdown at school that redirected attention from my academic award ceremony. I told you then, she continued, that one day you would have to decide whether you were comfortable staying in the background. I hadn't remembered that part. I'm proud of you, she said simply. The line went quiet. Not awkward. Steady. Like she was handing something back to me. When we hung up, I realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From recognition. Tuesday morning, Mom showed up unannounced. She didn't call. She used her key. I never asked for it back. She walked in like she always did, assessing. You need to fix this, she said immediately. Good morning to you too. This is spiraling. Spiraling for who? For everyone. People are asking questions. That sounds uncomfortable. Her jaw tightened. Don't be flippant. I'm not. I'm calm. You've embarrassed this family. There it was again. Embarrassment. Image. Optics. I didn't embarrass anyone, I said. I made a decision about my own wedding. You blindsided us. No, I replied. I stopped consulting you. That landed. She blinked once. You think you're making some grand statement. I'm making a boundary. She laughed short, sharp. Naomi, you've always been the mature one. Why are you suddenly acting impulsive? Impulsive. Because I didn't ask permission. Maybe maturity doesn't mean compliance, I said. For the first time, she didn't have an immediate answer. She paced the living room. You don't understand the position this puts Lila in. There it was. Finally. What position? She was planning a surprise announcement at your reception. The air left my lungs. What kind of announcement? Mom hesitated, then said it quickly. She's engaged. Silence filled the room. She wanted to reveal it at your wedding, Mom continued. It would have been beautiful. A shared celebration. Shared. My wedding. Her engagement. Was she going to ask me first? Mom didn't respond, because she didn't need to. Something in me locked into place. This wasn't about postponing. It wasn't about emotional fragility. It was about spotlight distribution. My milestone had been scheduled as a platform, and I was expected to smile. Do you hear yourself? I asked quietly. Mom stopped pacing. It's not unreasonable. It's not her party. She's your sister. Yes, I said. And I'm not her stage. Her expression changed then. From defensive to offended. I cannot believe you're being this selfish. There it was. Selfish. The nuclear word. The one that kept me compliant for decades. I didn't flinch. Maybe I am, I said softly. Maybe that's overdue. The apartment felt different after she walked out. Not tense. Not chaotic. Just separate. Daniel came home and found me sitting on the floor again. She was going to let Lila announce her engagement at our reception, I said. He closed his eyes briefly. I'm glad you canceled. No hesitation. No diplomacy. Just clarity. By Wednesday, the extended family narrative had shifted again. Now it was, she overreacted. She couldn't handle sharing. She's jealous of Lila. Jealous. I'd spent my life protecting Lila, shielding her, deflecting attention away from her mistakes. And now I was jealous. The irony was almost elegant. That night, doubt slipped in quietly. What if I had just talked to Lila first? What if I'd misinterpreted everything? What if I am selfish? Daniel found me staring at the dark ceiling. You're second-guessing, he said. Yes. Good. Good. It means you're not reactive. You're reflective. I turned toward him. Do you think I did the right thing? He didn't answer immediately. I think, he said carefully, you did the thing that ended the pattern. That's never comfortable. Thursday afternoon, Lila finally texted me directly. Can we talk? Not accusatory. Not dramatic. Just 3 words. I stared at them for a long time. Because for once I didn't feel like rushing to fix something. I felt like waiting. Letting her come toward me. Instead of the other way around. I typed back. Okay. Tomorrow. Her reply came instantly. At Mom's. I stared at the screen. Neutral ground or familiar battlefield? I hesitated. Then wrote. No. Here. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then disappeared. Then reappeared. Finally. Okay. And just like that, the next confrontation wasn't about a wedding. It was about rewriting the roles entirely. Lila arrived 10 minutes early. That alone told me something was different. She was never early. She knocked instead of using her key. That told me even more. When I opened the door, she looked smaller somehow. Not physically. She was still polished, styled, put together, but uncertain. Like someone stepping onto a stage without a spotlight. Hi, she said. Hi. No hug. We stood there for a second too long before I stepped aside to let her in. I'd chosen my apartment intentionally. Neutral ground. No family photos lining the hallway. No childhood trophies. No hierarchy. Just 2 chairs facing each other and a quiet room. She perched on the edge of the couch like she wasn't sure she'd stay long. I didn't know Mom told you, she started. She didn't mean to, I replied. Lila exhaled slowly. She thought it would be beautiful. For who? She hesitated. For everyone. Except me. Her eyes flicked up. That's not fair. Isn't it? Silence settled between us, but it wasn't hostile. It was unfamiliar. We had never spoken without our parents somewhere in the frame. So you're engaged, I said. She nodded. 3 months. 3 months. I didn't tell anyone yet. I wanted the timing to be perfect. Perfect meaning my reception? She winced. It wasn't supposed to take anything away from you. That's exactly what it would have done. She looked down at her hands. You don't understand how it feels to be compared to you all the time. The sentence landed harder than I expected. Compared how? You're stable. You're accomplished. You're the one Dad brags about when I'm not in the room. That stunned me. He does not. He does, she insisted. You're the gold standard. I'm the one who's always finding herself. For a moment the room tilted. Two people, raised in the same house, living in completely different realities. You think I'm the favorite? I asked carefully. I think you're the successful one. That's not the same thing. She looked up sharply. Isn't it? I shook my head. Success doesn't get you protected. It gets you expected. She frowned. I don't follow. You were allowed to fall apart, I said quietly. I wasn't. She opened her mouth to respond, closed it, opened it again. Mom always said you were strong. She said you were fragile. We both went quiet, because neither of those labels were neutral. Strong meant you don't need help. Fragile meant you get it automatically. I didn't want to hijack your wedding, Lila said finally. I just wanted one moment where I wasn't behind you. Behind me. The irony was almost unbearable. I've never felt ahead of you, I admitted. She blinked. What? I felt responsible for you, not superior. Her expression shifted, confusion, then something softer. I didn't ask for that. I know. And I didn't ask to be the fragile one, she shot back. There it was. The first honest exchange of our adult lives. Did you know Mom planned the announcement without asking me? I asked. She nodded slowly. She said you'd understand. Do you? Lila swallowed. No. That was the first crack. She told me, Lila continued, that your wedding was the perfect backdrop, that people would already be emotional. A backdrop. I let that word sit. And you were okay with that? She hesitated longer this time. I thought maybe it would make us closer. Like a shared memory. By sharing my spotlight? I don't think of it as spotlight. That's because you've always been allowed to stand in it. The sentence hung there. Not cruel. Just true. She stood up abruptly and began pacing. A move so familiar it almost made me smile. I hate that we're fighting. We're not fighting, I said calmly. We're untangling. She stopped pacing. Do you know what Mom said after you canceled? What? She said you'd come around. That you always do. That one hit. She wasn't wrong. I always had. Until now. Lila sat back down. If you hadn't canceled, she asked slowly, would you have said yes to the announcement? I didn't answer immediately, because honesty required courage. Yes, I admitted. She stared at me. Why? Because I didn't know how to say no. That broke something in her expression. Not anger. Recognition. I thought you didn't care, she said quietly. I cared too much. We sat there in silence again. But it felt different now. Less defensive. More aware. You know what's messed up? She said eventually. Mom told me you didn't need the attention. That you weren't sentimental about weddings. I laughed softly. I cried picking my dress. You did. Yes. She looked genuinely surprised. Because she'd never seen it. Because Mom had never told her. We had both been curated. Different versions of us presented to each other. I was the composed one. She was the delicate one. Neither fully true. Do you want to know something else? Lila asked. I nodded. I was terrified of your wedding. Why? Because it felt like you were officially ahead. Settled. Stable. And I'm still trying to prove I can be. My chest tightened. I've never been competing with you. I have, she admitted. That honesty cost her something. I could see it. So what happens now? She asked. I'm still getting married, I said. Just smaller. How small? 10 people. She inhaled sharply. I'm not invited, am I? There it was. The old dynamic hovering between us. I studied her face. Not the performance. The person. Do you want to come? I asked carefully. As my sister, not as a co-headliner? Her eyes filled instantly. Yes. The word wasn't dramatic. It was raw. Then here's the deal, I said. No surprise announcements. No. No shared milestones. No. And if Mom tries to rewrite it? Lila hesitated. Then, I'll back you. It was the first time she'd ever said that. Not in theory. Not in childhood defense. In adulthood. As she stood to leave, she paused at the door. There's something else, she said quietly. What? She didn't just plan the announcement. Cold crept up my spine. What do you mean? Lila swallowed. She also told Dad to adjust his speech. Adjust how? She wanted him to talk about how both his daughters were stepping into new chapters, but emphasize how proud he was that I finally found stability. Finally. The implication burned. My wedding. Her redemption arc. The narrative was never neutral. It was scripted. When the door closed behind her, I didn't feel victorious. I felt recalibrated. Daniel came home an hour later. How did it go? I sat back down on the couch. For the first time, I said. It felt like we were talking without a director. He smiled slightly. That's new. Yes, I said. And fragile. Not fragile like Lila. Fragile like something growing. That night my phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad. Dinner tomorrow, the text read. Just us. Important. Just us. No Mom. No Lila. Important. I stared at the message. Because if Mom was the architect, Dad was the silent enforcer. And I had never once confronted him directly. Until now. Dad chose a quiet steakhouse across town. Not our usual family restaurant. Not home. Neutral ground. That alone told me this wasn't casual. When I arrived, he was already seated. Back straight. Hands folded. Water untouched. He looked older. Or maybe I'd never looked at him directly enough to notice. You came, he said. You said it was important. He nodded once. No hug. No small talk. The waiter poured water and left. We were alone. I hear you and your mother are at odds, he began. We are. She's upset. I know. He studied me for a moment like I was a contract he didn't understand. Why did you cancel the wedding? Direct. No cushioning. Because it stopped feeling like mine. He frowned. That's vague. It's honest. He leaned back slightly. Your mother put a lot of effort into that event. I put $38,000 into it. That made him blink. You paid for all of it? Yes. A pause. I thought we were contributing. You were contributing direction. Silence. He folded his hands again. This seems extreme. Is it? Yes. I held his gaze. If Lila had wanted to announce her engagement at my reception, would you have stopped it? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. It would have been celebratory, he said carefully. For who? For the family. And if I didn't want that? He exhaled. You're not usually territorial. Territorial. As if wanting ownership over my own wedding was possessive. Asking for something to be mine isn't territorial, I said. It's basic. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he shifted tactics. You've always handled things well. Your mother leans on that. There it was again. The compliment that costs you something. So because I handle things, I said, I should absorb more? That's not what I'm saying. It's exactly what you're saying. Dad had never been loud like Mom. He didn't orchestrate. He didn't micromanage. He deferred, which meant he allowed. Did you ever notice, I asked quietly, that I was expected to adjust more than Lila? He frowned. You were more capable. That's not an answer. It is, he insisted. Lila struggled more. With what? He didn't answer. Because the truth was uncomfortable. She didn't struggle more. She just struggled louder. There was something else I'd been circling. Something I hadn't wanted to ask. Did you ever set aside money for my wedding? His jaw tightened. We had funds allocated for both of you. Allocated. Past tense. What happened to mine? He stared at the table for a long moment. We had to help Lila after she left school. My pulse slowed. How much? That's not relevant. It is to me. Another pause. 30,000. The number rang in my ears. $30,000. Quietly redirected. Without conversation. Without notice. Did you tell me? You didn't need to know. I laughed once. Not amused. Of course I didn't. You see what I'm saying now? I asked calmly. He looked defensive. You had scholarships. Internships. You were self-sufficient. So that meant my share was flexible? It meant you didn't need it as urgently. There it was. Urgency. Loudness gets funded. Competence gets rerouted. You didn't think I'd notice, I said. His expression flickered. We assumed you'd understand. That word again. Understand. As if my default setting was accommodation. And if I didn't? He looked genuinely confused. You always have. Not this time. I'm not angry about the money, I said. That surprised him. I'm angry about the assumption. What assumption? That my milestones are optional. They're not optional. They were movable. Silence again. Heavy. Real. He sighed. This is how families work. No, I said. This is how imbalance works. You think we favored Lila. I think you protected her more. She needed it. And I needed acknowledgement. That one landed. Because acknowledgement costs nothing. For the first time his posture softened. You were easier, he admitted. The words were quiet. Almost reluctant. What does that mean? It means you didn't demand. You didn't fall apart. You didn't scare us. I felt something crack open. So I got less because I frightened you less? He looked down. That's not how we saw it. But it's how it functioned. He didn't argue. You know what the hardest part is? I asked. He waited. I would have helped her. If you'd asked. He looked up sharply. What? If you'd said, we need to use some of your wedding fund to support your sister, I would have said yes. The truth of that sat between us. You didn't trust me enough to involve me, I continued. You just decided for me. He absorbed that. Slowly. I'm still getting married, I said. I know. It will be small. So your mother says. She doesn't get to decide this one. He studied me carefully. You've changed. No, I replied. I've stopped cushioning. After a long silence he asked it. Are you cutting us out? It wasn't accusatory. It was cautious. No, I said honestly. But I'm not rearranging myself anymore. He nodded once. As if calculating. As if this were a negotiation. When the check came he reached for it. I stopped him. I've got it. He looked at me. Why? Because I can. It wasn't about pride. It was about symbolism. I paid. We stood. There was a moment, awkward, unfamiliar, where a hug might have happened. It didn't. Your mother won't take this well, he warned. She doesn't have to. Driving home I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. Not the old steady, the compliant one. A new steady. Intentional. When I told Daniel about the conversation he was quiet for a long time. 30,000, he repeated softly. Yeah. That's not small. No. Are you okay? I thought about it. Yes, I said finally. Because now I know. Knowing changes the dynamic. Secrets create imbalance. Clarity creates choice. That night I received an email. From my mother. Subject line. If this is how you want it. 3 attachments. A revised guest list. A drafted speech she intended to give at the wedding. A budget breakdown. At the bottom of the email. If you insist on downsizing, your father and I will not contribute financially. We cannot support a spectacle that excludes family unity. I stared at the screen. They weren't contributing anyway. But now it was conditional. Support in exchange for control. And for the first time I didn't feel intimidated. I felt curious. Because if money was their leverage, what would happen when I removed it entirely? I didn't respond to my mother's email. Not immediately. Not emotionally. I read it 3 times. The revised guest list was smaller, but still strategic. Her friends. Dad's colleagues. A handful of extended family positioned carefully like witnesses to a narrative. Her drafted speech was worse. Both my daughters stepping into womanhood. Lila finally finding her footing. Naomi, always our rock. Rock. Even in a downsized version, the script remained intact. The budget breakdown was almost comical. Projected contributions from them. Contingent on appropriate scale and family inclusion. Money as choreography. I closed the laptop. Then I opened a blank document. And started from 0. 5, I said to Daniel that night. He looked up from the couch. 5 what? 5 guests. Total. He smiled slowly. That's radical. Is it? A little. Good. We sat cross-legged on the floor with a notebook between us. 5 names. No politics. No symbolism. No balancing acts. Just presence. Daniel's parents. Mrs. Alvarez. One of his closest friends. And Lila. That was it. Not even my parents. I didn't say it out loud at first. But it sat there unspoken. Daniel noticed. You don't have to invite them, he said gently. I know. Do you want to? I inhaled slowly. I don't want to perform. That was the truest thing I'd said all week. I called her the next morning. It's going to be very small, I told her. How small? 5 guests. Silence. Am I one of them? Yes. Her breath caught. What about Mom and Dad? They're not. Another pause. Longer. Okay, she said quietly. Just okay. No drama. No guilt. That surprised me. You're not mad? I asked. I think, she hesitated. I think if they come, it won't be yours. That landed gently, like something honest and protective. I don't want to stand on your stage anymore, she added. Stage. She was seeing it now. Mom found out by Thursday. I didn't tell her. Lila did. Which meant Lila chose transparency over alignment. Mom called within minutes. Her voice wasn't sharp this time. It was cold. You're excluding us. I'm simplifying. You're punishing us. I'm protecting myself. You think this makes you strong? No, I said calmly. It makes me honest. Dad didn't get on the phone. That was his pattern. Silence as avoidance. You'll regret this, Mom said finally. Maybe, I replied. But it will be my regret. She hung up. By Friday, the story had evolved again. Now it was, she's isolating. She's pushing us away. She's changed. Changed. That word again. As if growth were betrayal. Daniel's mother called that evening. I heard there's tension, she said gently. There is. I just want you to know something, she continued. You're allowed to have a peaceful wedding. No lecture. No politics. Just permission. It felt foreign. We didn't book another ballroom. We chose a cliffside overlook an hour north of the city. No chandeliers. No marble floors. Just ocean. Wind. Sky. A local officiant. A permit that cost less than my original centerpiece order. When I stood there for the first time, watching waves crash against the rocks, I felt something unfamiliar. Small. In a good way. There was no stage. No audience. Just space. The week before the ceremony, something strange happened. Silence. Mom stopped calling. Dad didn't text. Extended family chatter faded. It was like the machine had paused. I half expected a dramatic intervention. It didn't come. Instead, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was my wedding fund ledger. Printed. Highlighted. Sticky note attached. You were always capable. Dad. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. But it was acknowledgement. And that was new. Lila came over with takeout. No tension. No rehearsed speeches. We sat on the floor eating noodles from cartons. Are you scared? She asked. Yes, I said honestly. About tomorrow? About the shift? She nodded. I feel it too. For you. For us. She hesitated. Mom's furious. I know. But she's also confused. About what? About why you're not coming back around. That almost made me smile. I'm not revolving anymore, I said. She laughed softly. That's going to be hard for her. Yes. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then she said something unexpected. I don't want to be the fragile one anymore. I looked at her. You don't have to be. She swallowed. Then stop being the strong one. The sentence hung there. Not accusatory. Invitational. Maybe we were both shedding roles. The sky was clear. Blue in that effortless way that doesn't need enhancement. 5 chairs were set up facing the water. The officiant stood quietly reviewing notes. Daniel squeezed my hand. You ready? Yes. And I meant it. Not ready for perfection. Ready for ownership. Daniel's parents arrived first. Warm hugs. Steady presence. Mrs. Alvarez followed, her silver hair pinned back, eyes shining. Lila came last. Simple dress. No performance. No announcement. Just my sister. She hugged me tightly. I'm here, she whispered. I know. We waited. 5 minutes past the start time. 10. The wind picked up slightly. I turned to Daniel. We're good, he said softly. And we were. The officiant began. Halfway through the vows, I saw movement at the edge of the overlook. 2 figures walking slowly up the path. Mom and Dad. They weren't dressed formally. No dramatic entrance. Just present. They stopped several feet behind the chairs. Not seated. Not interrupting. Just watching. My pulse quickened. Daniel felt it. Do you want to pause? He whispered. I looked at my parents. Mom's face wasn't angry. It wasn't polished. It was uncertain. Dad gave a small nod. Not commanding. Not correcting. Just acknowledging. I turned back to the officiant. No, I said. Continue. And we did. When I said I choose you, it felt deliberate. Not automatic. When Daniel said I choose you, it felt grounded. Not performative. The ocean roared behind us. Wind tugged at my dress. There was no applause cue. No lighting. Just breath. And when we kissed, it wasn't cinematic. It was real. When the ceremony ended, there were quiet embraces. Daniel's parents. Mrs. Alvarez. Lila, who cried without dramatics. Then my parents approached slowly. Mom's eyes were red. Dad looked steady. I didn't know if we were allowed to come, Mom said. You weren't invited, I replied gently. She nodded once. I know. No defensiveness. Just fact. Dad stepped forward. You look happy. I am. He studied my face, as if checking for cracks. He didn't find any. Mom hesitated. I didn't understand, she said quietly. Understand what? That you weren't rebelling. You were correcting. The word caught in her throat. Correcting. It wasn't an apology, but it was closer than we'd ever been. As everyone began walking back toward the cars, Mom touched my arm. There's something we need to tell you, she said softly. Not dramatic. Not accusatory. Serious. Dad's expression shifted slightly. Weighty. What is it? I asked. They exchanged a look. And for the first time in my life, it wasn't about Lila. The ocean was still loud behind us. Guests were walking back toward their cars, shoes crunching softly against gravel. But Mom's hand was still on my arm. There's something we need to tell you, she repeated. Dad stood beside her, not rigid but braced. Whatever this was, they'd rehearsed it. Okay, I said. My voice didn't shake. We moved a few yards away from the others. Far enough for privacy. Close enough that Daniel could see me. He didn't interrupt. He just watched. Dad cleared his throat first. Before you were born, he began, your mother had complications. I blinked. With Lila. Mom nodded. Severe ones. I'd never heard that word attached to my birth story. No one had ever told it like a storm or a miracle. It was just normal. Dad continued. Lila's delivery was traumatic. There was oxygen loss. Brief. But enough that doctors warned us there could be developmental delays. My pulse slowed. Was there? Not significantly, Mom said quickly. But for the first 3 years we didn't know that. I looked at her carefully. And we were told to monitor her constantly. Every behavior. Every milestone. Suddenly, pieces started shifting in my head. She was under a microscope, Mom continued. Every tantrum felt like a sign. Every bad grade felt catastrophic. And me? I asked quietly. Dad's voice softened. You were uncomplicated. That word again. Uncomplicated. Mom swallowed. When you were born, it felt like relief. Relief. You slept. You fed easily. You hit milestones early. After 3 years of panic, you were calm. So you leaned into that, I said. We were exhausted, Dad admitted. We thought, Mom added carefully, that if one child was steady, we could focus more energy on the one who might struggle. The logic was clean, reasonable, even loving. First. But Lila didn't struggle, I said slowly. Not long term, Dad agreed. So why didn't the dynamic shift? Silence. Because that was the real question. Mom looked down at her hands. By then it was habit. You get used to worrying, Mom said softly. You build your world around prevention. And I became the proof that everything was okay, I said. She looked up. Yes. That hit. Not because it was cruel. Because it was true. Lila was monitored. I was assumed. Lila was fragile until proven strong. I was strong until proven fragile. And I had never allowed myself to prove fragile. There's more, Dad said quietly. My chest tightened. What? He exhaled slowly. When you were 9, you had pneumonia. I frowned. I remember being sick. You were hospitalized for 2 days. Yes. Mom's eyes filled. And we weren't there the second night. I stared at her. What? Lila had a panic episode, Dad said carefully. We were told not to leave her alone. My stomach dropped. I don't remember you not being there. You wouldn't, Mom whispered. You had a fever. You were delirious. Something cold spread through me. So you chose her. Mom flinched. We thought you were stable. I laughed softly, a sound that didn't feel like mine. I was 9. Silence swallowed us whole. For years, I told myself I wasn't prioritized because I was capable. Now I understood something deeper. I had been the emotional insurance policy, the safe investment, the child they didn't have to fear losing. And fear drives behavior more than love ever admits. You weren't unloved, Mom said quickly, almost defensively. I know, I replied. And I meant it. This wasn't about lack of love. It was about distribution of fear. Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked. Dad's answer was immediate. Because you didn't complain. The honesty stunned me. You didn't demand reassurance, he continued. You didn't act out. So silence equals consent? I asked quietly. He winced. No. But it functioned that way. He didn't argue. Something surprising happened then. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. This wasn't favoritism rooted in preference. It was imbalance rooted in anxiety. They had raised one child like glass, and the other like steel. But steel still bends. Steel still breaks. Just does it quietly. Mom stepped closer. We didn't see it, she said. I know. That doesn't excuse it. No. Her eyes searched my face. You're right to draw boundaries. The sentence was fragile, but it was real. Dad nodded once. We thought strength meant you didn't need us as much. That's not what strength means, I said. I know that now. There's one more thing, Mom said softly. My stomach tightened again. What? When Lila got engaged, she panicked. About what? She said she felt behind you. Inadequate. Like she'd always be catching up. That tracked. She asked if there was a way to feel equal. And you thought sharing my wedding would do that. Mom nodded. It felt symbolic. It would have reinforced the pattern. I see that now. The wind picked up slightly. Waves crashed louder below us. I can't undo childhood, I said carefully. But I can decide what happens next. Dad nodded. What do you need? The question hung there. Not defensive. Not controlling. Open. I need you to stop redistributing my life, I said. They absorbed that. I need you to let me be first in my own milestones. Mom's voice broke slightly. We can try. Try. Not promise. Try. That felt honest. As we started walking back toward the others, Dad stopped. There's something else, he said. I braced again. When your grandmother passed, she left something specifically for you. I blinked. What? We didn't tell you at the time, Mom admitted. My pulse sharpened. Why? We thought you didn't need it. There it was again. Didn't need. What was it? Dad's expression shifted. A trust. The air seemed to thin. For what amount? I asked quietly. He hesitated. Enough to have covered your wedding twice. Silence roared louder than the ocean. You redirected it? I asked. No, he said quickly. It's still there. I stared at him. You never told me. We thought you were fine. Fine. The most expensive word in my life. We reached the cars. Daniel looked at my face immediately. What happened? There's a trust, I said quietly. For you. Yes. Why didn't they tell you? Because I was fine. He exhaled slowly. And now? I looked back at my parents. They were watching me carefully. Waiting. Now, I said, I decide what fine means. I didn't open the trust documents immediately. For 3 days, the envelope sat on the kitchen counter. Heavy. Unassuming. Powerful. Daniel didn't push. He just made coffee, kissed my shoulder in the mornings and let me move at my own pace. Which I was beginning to realize was what choice actually felt like. Not urgency. Not pressure. Just agency. When I finally sat down to review the paperwork, I expected anger. Instead, I felt something closer to grief. The trust had been established by my grandmother before she passed. Her handwritten note was scanned and attached. For Naomi, because she carries more than she lets on. My throat tightened. She had seen it. Even when I didn't. The amount wasn't astronomical, but it was substantial. Enough to cover my original wedding budget. Enough to fund a down payment. Enough to shift leverage. It had sat untouched for years, because no one thought I needed it. Money isn't just currency. It's influence. It's decision-making freedom. It's the ability to say no without asking. And for years, my parents had operated under the assumption that I didn't require that buffer. 'Cause I was fine. But fine is often just silent survival. She came over again the following evening. No agenda. No defensiveness. Just curiosity. Did you look at it? She asked. Yes. And? It changes things. She nodded slowly. I didn't know about it. I believe you. That mattered. There was no accusation between us now. Just untangling. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. Do you resent me? It wasn't dramatic. It was vulnerable. I considered the question carefully. No, I said finally. Not even a little. I resent the system, I said. Not the person who grew inside it. Her eyes filled slightly. I didn't know how much space I was taking. You were told you needed it. And you were told you didn't. Yes. Silence. Then she surprised me. I'm in therapy, she said quietly. I blinked. For what? For anxiety, she admitted. And for identity stuff. Identity stuff? She gave a small self-aware smile. When you're labeled fragile long enough, you start performing it. That landed hard. Because I had performed strength just as consistently. We had both been cast. 2 weeks later, I invited my parents and Lila to dinner. Not at their house. Not at mine. Neutral restaurant. Private room. They looked wary when they arrived. Mom sat upright, prepared. Dad quiet. Lila steady. I placed a folder on the table. The trust is legally mine, I began. Dad nodded. Yes. I've decided what to do with it. Mom's hands folded tightly. I opened the folder. I'm splitting it. 3 faces changed at once. Into what? Dad asked. 1/3 stays with me. He nodded slowly. 1/3 is being placed into a joint investment account in Lila's name. Lila's head snapped up. What? For whatever you build next, I said calmly. Not as rescue. As equality. Her eyes filled instantly. You don't have to do that. I know. That was the point. Choice. And the final third? Mom asked carefully. I'm creating a small fund for future family milestones. Silence. What kind of milestones? Dad asked. Any that aren't redistributed. The sentence wasn't sharp. It was structured. If someone needs support, we discuss it together. No silent rerouting. No assumed flexibility. Mom swallowed. That's generous. It's balanced. There was one more thing I needed to say. I won't be the default anymore. Mom stiffened slightly. If someone needs support, we talk about it. She nodded slowly. No more assuming I'll absorb the adjustment. Dad spoke this time. That's fair. It was the first time he'd used that word. Fair. A month later, there was a family gathering for my cousin's engagement. Normally, these events were controlled narratives, subtle hierarchies, implied comparisons. This time something shifted. When someone asked about my wedding, Mom answered simply. It was small, and exactly what she wanted. No subtext, no justification, just fact. Lila stood beside me, not behind, not in front, beside. When someone joked, "You're the stable one, Naomi," she interrupted gently. She's also allowed to be complicated. It was subtle, but it was new. Later that evening, Dad pulled me aside. I've been thinking, he said. That's good. He almost smiled. I didn't know how much silence costs. I nodded. It compounds. He exhaled slowly. I'm trying to notice sooner. That's all I need. The truth is, healing didn't happen in a single speech. It didn't wrap neatly. Mom still struggles with control. Dad still defaults to quiet. Lila still battles anxiety. And I still feel the reflex to overhandle things. But the difference is this. Now I see it. And when you see a pattern clearly, it stops being fate. It becomes choice. Months later, Daniel and I hosted dinner at our home. My home. Not large. Not grand. But ours. Lila brought dessert. Mom asked before rearranging anything. Dad washed dishes without commentary. At one point, I stepped into the kitchen alone. The room was warm. Laughter from the living room. The kind that doesn't perform. And I realized something quietly profound. I wasn't the backup anymore. Not because they changed first, but because I did. Being the reliable one isn't a flaw. Being strong isn't the problem. The problem is when strength becomes permission for others to take. You can love your family. You can understand their fears. You can even forgive their blind spots. But you don't have to finance them. You don't have to shrink for them. And you don't have to be the emotional insurance policy forever. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let them feel the weight you've been carrying.